As an alienated parent, there might be this running feeling of, I can't keep doing this. I should not have to handle this much mistreatment, rejection, and disrespect. One more ignored text, one more court filing, one more bill, and I'm going to explode. Mastering difficult emotions is what will set you free.
Welcome to Beyond the High Road, a podcast dedicated to healing your heart and life following the grief of alienation. I'm your host, Shelby Milford, a twice-certified life coach specializing in post-traumatic growth. If you're experiencing the effects of alienation and you're ready to heal, then this show is my love letter to you. Stay tuned.
Hey y'all, how we doing? So, I have a new camera here, and I think that I'm messing around with it. I feel like it looks funny and different, and anyway. So, just bear with me this week while I get used to it. I've got to change the backlighting and stuff, and I know that many of you are not even watching, so it doesn't matter, but I'm just putting it out there. Bear with me while I play with the technical side of things the next couple weeks. So, moving along. And also, too, when I'm reading I've got my notes, of course. When I'm reading my notes, the way that my camera is positioned now, it's going to look odd until I work out the kinks. Anyway, so we are going to get started. Okay. So this week we're talking about capacity and capability. As an alienated parent, I want you to check in with me regarding how true this feels. Okay. On paper, you might look functional, maybe not, depending on where you are in the journey. Maybe you're working, maybe you're paying your bills, maybe even showing up for other people. But quietly, there might be this running feeling of, I can't keep doing this. I should not have to handle this much mistreatment, rejection, and disrespect. I hear this from so many parents, and I was in that boat too, One more ignored text, one more court filing, one more bill, and I'm going to explode. Feels like you're already at the brink, right? You're like up to your forehead in stress, in responsibility, and emotions overload. You're carrying the financial burden, you're carrying the emotional tax, sometimes even the physical toll, somatic symptoms, and the idea of one more disappointment oftentimes feels impossible to bear. I hear this from my new clients all the time, and really like my clarity calls, where they will say to me, like, I couldn't even handle the disappointment. I don't know how you could handle the disappointment. And I'm going to get into that later. But so what ends up happening from there is that you start backing away from things that could actually change your life for the better, right? Change the whole trajectory of your life. Your life. You don't apply for the job, you don't start the business, you don't say yes to a new relationship or even just to a new opportunity, like to go out and outing with friends or possible friends, potential friends, You don't make the call, send the message, or try the new strategy. Not because you're incapable. You're fully capable. You have the skills, you have the intelligence, you have the heart that it takes, maybe even tenacity that it takes. But your capacity has quietly shrunk. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at the difference between capability and capacity and why so many parents mistake a capacity issue for a capability issue, and how long-term stress and rejection can actually make your life and you feel smaller and smaller. Okay, and most importantly, I want to talk with you guys about how you can grow your capacity back on purpose, deliberately, so you can actually step into those opportunities in front of you instead of standing on the sidelines telling yourself, I just can't. I wouldn't be able to handle it. So let's start by separating out what you can do, like your abilities, from how much you can hold. Because once you see that clearly, everything else starts to make so much more sense. So let's start simple. When we talk about capacity with an object, I wrote all of this out earlier and I was like, all right, so if we're thinking about, of course I went and looked at Google Dictionary and stuff like that, but I kind of, not Google's dictionary, but it's Googled it and looked for the definitions of the words. And I took what like the Webster Dictionary said, and then I also added to, because when we talk about capacity specifically for an object, it's going to be a much different definition than for us. And then, of course, I'm going to go into it. When we talk about capacity for an object, what I'm talking about is the total amount that object can hold. A cup can hold 8 ounces or 12 ounces or whatever the cup is. A tank can hold maybe 10 gallons. And then, of course, we have systems, machines, operations. Usually it's the total amount that system can produce. I mean, sometimes it's hold, but usually when we're talking about an object's going to hold something like a container can hold a volume of something. And then a system is how much it can actually put out. That's its capacity. But when we're talking about you and I, people, it's much different. You and I are not cups. We're not gas tanks. We're not a factory. We're wired with an advanced brain, right, that can watch itself and question our own thoughts and decide on purpose what we want to believe, what we can accomplish, achieve with our brains, with our noggins, with all of our executive functions is much different than anything else with consciousness on this planet, right? So for humans, I want to define capacity as your total bandwidth, your energy, your emotional space, and your resilience, how much life that you can hold and experience at once. Okay, that's capacity in my definition for us as humans. Capability, on the other hand, is the actual skill set that you possess at current and like competence to do a task, right? So personal growth requires, and that's what we're doing here, right? It's why you're listening to this podcast, I think. If it's not, you might want to turn it off now, but requires increasing both of these things, capacity and capability. And you want them to go hand in hand, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So you want to enhance your capability through skill development, right? Through acquiring the knowledge or the ability to do whatever it is that you want to do. And then at the same time, you want to expand capacity through improved energy management, your resilience, and your thought management. Okay? So now that we have separated what you can do from how much you can hold, I want to talk about one of the most common pieces of advice that we get from, no disrespect, a lot of the old way of thinking from counselors and therapists and our parents and what have you around trauma and grief. Okay? It's so common to hear things like, know your limits, don't push yourself, protect your heart, protect your energy. All of those 3 statements and any statements like that, they sound loving, they sound noble, they sound wise, and sometimes they are appropriate. Comments like those are appropriate. There are rules to live by, but I want to play with this a little bit because for most of you, these are my limits is not a fact. It's a belief that you've repeated so often that it feels like a diagnosis. So I want you to try something with me. Wherever you are, just say the sentence in your mind. I know my limits. Say that to yourself. Notice what happens in your body when you say that. Where do you feel it physically? Do you feel open or do you feel closed? Does it feel freeing, like empowering? Do you feel motivated? Probably not, I'm going to guess. For most people, that sentence feels like an opt-out. It lands as constriction, not as freedom. I know my limits. It sounds disheartening. Yeah, closed off. That's like a wet blanket on top of your potential. For me, anyway, that's what it does. When I was writing this, when I was thinking about this over the last week or so, I was jotting down notes and thinking about all the ways that we limit ourselves and our capability and our capacity because of how we're thinking about capability and capacity. If you've said these things to yourself, anything like this, right? I know my limits. I need to protect my energy, protect my heart. Don't push. I'm not going to push myself. Or you hear my mom used to say this to me all the time. Don't push yourself any. Protect yourself. It was lovely. She didn't mean anything bad by it. if you've been saying this to yourself, I want you to consider that it's highly, highly possible that you've been reinforcing your own believed limitations. You might be calling it self-care. Oh, I'm just caring for myself. I know where my boundaries are. When it's actually self-constriction. And it's not your fault. This is what many of us were taught by people who loved us and wanted us safe, like I was saying with my mom. Basically, what I'm saying is that you likely inherited this habit or this mindset of protecting your energy, of knowing your limits and all that stuff from somebody else's fear for you or for their own fear of expansion themselves. Okay? So I want to urge you to start questioning these kinds of thoughts and beliefs that you might have, rules for how to live life, what you should take on, what you should handle, what you can handle, what other people are handling, all of that. Let me show you how this plays out with capability and capacity. You could be wildly capable and still not possess the capacity to hold the life that comes with it. There was a few months back, I was watching, maybe it was a couple months ago. I was watching Mark Manson, like, you know how YouTube will play one video of somebody's and then it just goes and it keeps playing their videos? One of the videos, and I cannot remember what it was about, Mark Manson was talking about this boy genius from like the 1950s. He was like in newspapers and articles and what have you. He was like the most famous like young kid that anybody ever wrote about because he got accepted to and attended Harvard super young, like grade school age, right? He had gobs of capability, right? He was like, I think a math whiz or something. Don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I've seen the video. He ended up isolating himself from the world later on in life. And eventually this guy, now adult, in his 40s, became institutionalized. They committed him because he didn't have the capacity to hold all of that intelligence that he possessed in his brain. He didn't know how to handle it all. And so what he did instead was became a hermit and ended up basically imploding. My point here is that you can have all the capabilities in the world, but if you also don't hold the capacity, you won't be able to do anything with the skills. My mom was in town this last weekend, and I just had the TV on something, like background noise. And actually, I think I noticed it the weekend before too. Happy Gilmore has been on the TV a bunch on Comedy Central, I think it is, like on repeat. You know how they do that? And it made me think about what I was going to be talking about with you guys today. He could hit a golf ball into next week, but he had zero capacity for the emotional side of the game of golf. The structure, the etiquette, the mental stress, dealing with other people's opinions as well. He had to build that capacity with his mentor, right? Before I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the movie. Before his capability could actually mean anything. He was throwing fits on the golf course. He'd breaking his clubs, and he ended up losing a bunch of games until he took on the mentor. Once he built the capacity, then it all worked to his benefit. And I've seen this in my own life too. So I made a list this weekend of the things a quick list. I'm sure there was many, many more, but just sat down and did a 5-minute list of the things that I did not have the capacity to hold. Relationships with securely attached guys. I didn't have the capacity for peace in those relationships, for peace in general. I was so used to chaos that I would self-sabotage and sabotage the relationship because I didn't know how to sit with peace, right? And sit with just like normalcy and sometimes boredom even too in those relationships and outside the relationships too. I didn't have the capacity to hold on to money. And I've talked about this many, many, many times with you guys that, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I had this revelation that why is it that I could make money, and I've done that on several different periods of time in my life where I made okay money, right? But I couldn't hold on to money. I always seemed to spend it so that I was living paycheck to paycheck, you know? And I didn't need to spend it. It was almost like this nervous energy that I had around holding money. Even though I loved the idea of holding money, I couldn't because of my beliefs about that and my lack of capacity to hang on to it. Okay? To not drink during stressful situations. This was another thing. I did not have the capacity for that. I'd had the capacity at one point, right? As a kid, didn't need to drink during stressful situations. Maybe I would turn off in other ways because I hadn't yet built up the emotional resilience, right? But I did at one point have the capacity to not drink in stressful situations. And then all of a sudden I didn't. Even at one point, it was even going to see my sweet baby girl because of all of the narratives, and I felt defeated. And so to me, and this is, I can't say it's difficult for me to admit to you guys, but it's definitely something I'm definitely not proud of, but I'm also know how real it is. And I know that many of you are maybe in that boat where they use an allegation against you about how you are around your kid. Even though you may not have originally been guilty of that accusation, once all the stress built, that whatever you were being accused of, you ended up going and doing because to you that would take the air out of the whole situation, help you to deal. And then you ended up doing the very thing that you were accused of before and weren't doing. Does that make sense? And that was the case for me. So I know that sounded wordy, but anyway. So even going to see my baby girl, because it was so difficult for me at one point, maybe like a few months stretch, where it was so painful to sit with the idea that, number one, that it was necessary to have a supervisor present at all of my meetings with my daughter, right? Quote unquote visits with my daughter. But also that she wasn't coming home with me. It was just so bittersweet and awful. And it was just this constant reminder that, as much as I wanted to see her, I also didn't want to go to those things because it just made me face myself and face this ugly situation that I never would have chosen for myself. So in order to relieve myself of that, I ended up drinking. So at the time, I did not have the capacity, the emotional, mental capacity to withstand that. I would use that word in this application, but not how I want to use it today. Like, to have the resilience is where I'd want to be today. But back then, didn't know how else to manage it, Another way that I didn't have capacity is to stay calm and clearly speak in conversations during the darkest time periods, right? Without breaking down or clamming up, saying things I didn't want to be saying. You know how it goes, walking away feeling like, oh, I could not stay calm because I was in a constant stress response. And I wouldn't be, most of the time, what's so interesting about this, and I know that many of you also have this situation going on for you, you're experiencing this, where I would be walking through a grocery store and feeling pretty okay, right? Not overwhelmed. And then I would see somebody and them just asking me the question of, how are you? And their tone, their eye contact with me, that confrontation, though may have been loving, maybe it wasn't a quote unquote enemy or somebody from the other side, right? But that confrontation for me took me over the edge. And that's when I would just break down or run away, dodge and move away from the conversation. Anyway, another thing I didn't have the capacity for was to allow my mom to be herself. And I wrote this weekend and she was in town, so that's probably why. And she was difficult. I couldn't allow her to be herself without being entirely reactive in a negative way. I also didn't have the capacity to allow for pain to be present without running from it, to sit with embarrassment without hiding, to allow for boredom without blowing shit up, kind of like I was mentioning in the first example with relationships, to allow for awkward silences. I didn't have the capacity for that. My brain was working on overtime, thinking about all the things that they were thinking, and then it was just so much, it was too hard for me to hold all that, right? Because of what I was making it me. To sit through a movie at one point in my journey, I could not sit, never mind just sit still in stillness and quiet. I literally had to be moving. Back then, I had to be moving, like playing Frisbee because of the nervous energy I had, or sleeping, dead asleep, or entertained in some way, many ways, many times. I had to have a lot of input coming at me. I had to be handled. I needed to be handled by somebody or something in order to feel like I wasn't going to crawl out of my skin. I didn't have the capacity to handle disappointment or rejection, to hold someone else's hard truth, especially if it was about me or if it affected me. And then also to hear the opposing attorney or my ex talk poorly of me in court or what have you. I could not take it. I didn't know what to do with myself. I thought for sure I was going to, I don't know. I never came to it. I never made sense of it, but I thought, I can't handle this. I just can't. I needed to flee, right? Fight, flight response. So why does this matter for us as alienated parents? Because for most of us, we didn't sit down one day and say, I'd like to enroll myself in an advanced capacity building program called Alienation. You know? No way. The level of growth that we have experienced even up until now was thrust upon us. And I hear parents say to me all the time, I don't know how you handle this so well. I don't know how you aren't fazed by all of the things that they're saying about you. Why doesn't it faze you that your daughter hasn't reached back out? This is like some of my newer clients were dumbfounded when I told the story back, I don't know, maybe it was August or September of last year, about how I sent her a message and then she sent me a message and then I was blocked. And they were just dumbfounded by the fact that I just assume unfazed. And I really, truly, of course I have feelings because I love my daughter deeply. It's a bummer, but also I never was banking on it. So the question from them is always, why doesn't it faze you? How do you handle it so well? My answer is always because I choose to. I chose to then when I started this whole journey, and I choose to today. It's a constant choice. Well, now it's pretty much my default, but there are times where I do have to choose again. I chose to stop telling myself that nobody should have to handle this much pressure. That story itself, like nobody should have to handle this. Why do I have to handle this disrespect? This isn't right. That's how I spoke about this to myself. I chose to stop making it a problem that my nervous system was being asked to grow. It's not that it doesn't hurt. Like I was just trying to say, it's that I've expanded my capacity to hold that hurt without letting it run my life. And I want to show you how you can do that too. So let's talk now about what happens when you don't hold that, when you don't increase your capacity, when you keep saying to yourself, I can't handle this, or I don't have the capacity, I shouldn't have to deal with this, nobody else deals with this, why am I putting up with this? That's another thing, is I shouldn't put up with this, which is an ego thing to say, but anyway, I'm jumping ahead. You don't just describe your life as if it's factual. What you're doing is you're shaping your experience from that moment that you say those words moving forward, and you reinforce it then moving forward. Avoiding stress and avoiding discomfort, I talk about this a lot, but we've been talking about it a lot in this whole series. This is the number, by the way, you guys, this is number 4 of a 4-part series. I hope that's right. 4? Yeah. I guess we call it the possibilities series. So anyway, avoiding stress, avoiding discomfort doesn't just keep you safe. And I would really question anyway what safe means. That's what your system is telling you. Don't do this. Don't go there. Don't risk failure. Let's stay here where it's safe. Some version of that. But is it really safe? You could question your definition of safe, right? And like, is it safe to sit in the same spot in your life and not grow? How safe is that for you long term? Over time, doing this actually shrinks your capacity. By avoiding things, it shrinks you, it atrophies your capacity to hold and to handle all the things. I picture it like, I was thinking about this yesterday, I picture it kind of like an old school video game. Do you remember Legend of Zelda? I was not a gamer, but Zelda, Mario Brothers, that's what I remember. Donkey Kong. But if you picture Zelda, your character is in a maze. Every hard conversation, every risk becomes a wall. Every time you think, oh no, I could fail there, a wall goes up. Oh no, I might be disappointed, a wall goes up. Oh no, I don't know if I can handle the rejection. Another wall goes up. Eventually, your avatar is just bumping into walls in every direction. Your life becomes smaller and smaller. But when you question what you can handle, opening up to each and every disappointment and failure, all of those walls disintegrate. And it's now just open space for you to run and jump and expand. So each hard thing that you create space for, each difficult thing that you create space for, you also open up the door for bigger emotions, bigger actions, bigger opportunities, and a much bigger life. So instead of saying, oh, I need to avoid this person because I don't want to put myself into a stressful situation, a hurtful situation, put myself in the line of fire, you could decide that this is what's going to help you address the hot button or whatever it is that you're holding on to, right? So that then you can open up to all the situations to get good at feeling whatever comes up for you so that it becomes a non-issue. Because really, like I discussed in last week's episode, what you're ever fearing is your own thoughts, the experience that your own thoughts provide for you, you know? And if you didn't watch that episode, you can go back to last week and watch it. But basically what I was saying is many people have the fear of public speaking, right? Because they think that, oh my gosh, people are going to judge me. They're going to hate me, what I have to say. They're going to think I'm dumb. They're going to blah, 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 right? They're going to, I'm not wearing the right clothes or whatever. But really, that's your own assessment, thoughts, prediction about what other people might be thinking. So really, always what you're ever really afraid of when you're thinking about going and speaking publicly is your own thoughts about what other people are thinking about you, but all of those are still your own thoughts. You're afraid of your own thoughts. So instead, if you open up to all of the situations and get good at feeling whatever comes up for you in each of those situations, all of it becomes a non-issue because it's really all about your own thoughts, however you want to perceive somebody else's reaction even. So increasing your capacity is simply a decision. Like I was saying, I chose to change it for myself. It's a decision not to run, not to hide, not to blow shit up. It's a decision to open up to stress, right? When I think of like opening up to stress, if you have Apple products, maybe they had this on similar thing on in Android too, but like on my Apple Watch, they have the Breathe app where it shows you this little, like, I don't know how to explain it, but icon or something that it's like this. When you breathe in and you're supposed to fill your body, your lungs and your abdomen up with air, expand it. The little icon also, it's really pretty actually, this aqua blue expansion, right? And as you exhale, then it shrinks again. And then you expand and you open up to all of it like a flower blooming. And then you exhale and contract, right? That's what I'm saying here, offering for you guys here with all of the experiences maybe you've been shying away from. It's a decision to open up to stress, because what is stress anyway? Open up to unpleasant emotions that you might have. And when I am saying unpleasant here, I'm saying it in an effort to make sense to you. But I think that the word unpleasant is actually still a judgment that could very easily set a limiting tone for you if you're using that word along with the word emotion. Your language actually matters, and it will set a tone for you. But opening up to the whole gamut of emotions, because all it is a physical sensation that's happening. And like I've been talking about, well, forever, but I've been talking about recently, it's when you entertain your brain, the overthinking part. The overthinking happens as a result of you underfeeling. I hear it from people all the time. I am such an overthinker. Yeah, that's because you haven't learned how to, and it's okay because I was there too. Many of us are. You haven't developed the skill, the capability of dropping into your body and being like with you. Consciousness actually, it seems backwards. When we are living consciously, we are not overthinking or letting our brains distract us so much, right? You would think consciously, that's because we're using our brain, but really being conscious is being present in the now. And what overthinking does is takes you all the way to tomorrow and back to the past. And then you live in both of those places like you're straddling the today. And that is where all of your freedom lives. Okay, now I'm getting off topic. But when you learn how to be present with yourself and let go of the forward thinking and reverse thinking, and you can be in today without making all of the things going on in your life mean something for you, especially when I'm talking right now, I'm talking about like your kids, right? Or some outcomes that you're either really invested in not happening or invested in them happening. Either way, when you are white knuckling your future and today, it causes so much angst for you and resistance for you today, and it shrinks your capacity and also your capability, your bandwidth, really, to be present and to hold more. So what the basic gist of everything that I want to say today is that we are so trained. I think many of us have been trained to believe that we can't handle something because other people haven't handled it or because we were never taught or it's something that we didn't expect. Yes, with alienation, we got thrown into involuntarily, I would say all of us, into this position where all of a sudden now we're holding way more than we've ever thought that we could. And maybe you have other people telling you that too. Like, oh my gosh, I'd be able to how you're handling that. I wouldn't be able to handle it. I hear that. That statement itself is such a limiting belief. And so if you are buying into that statement, it's going to shrink your capacity and your capability even for how you go about with like for the things that you can handle in life today and moving forward. It's also going to shrink your ability to or your resilience, because you're making up a story about what you should and shouldn't be able to handle. But what I am suggesting today, this is what I think is so important, and I don't know why I haven't addressed this in this way yet after 185 episodes or 84 episodes. Today is 185. I have no idea why, because this is such a big thing for so many of us as alienated parents. We tell ourselves that we shouldn't have to handle it, that we can't handle it. But who's to say that you can't handle it? It's all about the way that you're looking at it. If you believe that the stress that you're under is harming you, then it's going to harm you. But if you believe that this is here, you choose it. Don't. Alienation happened. It was chosen for us, right? And now it's what we do with it. You could choose to believe that it's going to harm us, to take on any more or whatever. Or you could be like, you know what? Maybe it's not going to harm me because I have a very powerful human brain and system. And whatever you're thinking on, like however you're thinking about it, is the experience that you're going to provide to yourself. If you just decide that, like, uncomfortable situations, I'll use the example of my mom this weekend. We had a very lovely, fun, even weekend. And that, or even 2 years ago, would not be the story I was telling you today, because I decided, and it's a continual thing, especially with my mom, because I don't see her all the time. I don't have the opportunity to put myself in that situation all the time, but I'm trying to choose. I am choosing in the situation to grow myself. It could be a very unpleasant situation for me. It could have been this last weekend because I could have been like, oh, she does this, she does that, she tries to control. I could have had a whole story about it and about how that was bad for me and it wasn't healthy for me and I should know my boundaries and I shouldn't put myself around people that do these things. Even if it's my mom, I can choose my own family. You know what I'm saying? All these different stories that I hear from so many people, not just alienated parents. I could buy into that story and it would limit the hell out of my life and out of my, not only my ability to relate to and with my mom, but also in future relationships, other relationships that I have currently. Or I could decide that, yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. It's difficult. And even that is a judgment. But I want to actually learn how to master this. No matter what she is throwing at me. I did air quotes, but I don't mean like that. Like, it's really all what my brain is offering me, not her. She's going to present herself in whatever way she does, and that's about her. And it's my neutral circumstance. It's what I decide to think about it. But if I decide to lean into the bad, it's going to be an awful experience for me. And I'm going to think things like, oh, I shouldn't have to put myself in situations like this, blah, 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 blah. But if I decide this is here, I want to grow through this. I want to get really good at feeling the discomfort, at watching or witnessing myself and my mom with love, while she may have some issues with her own sense of control for her. You see? So I want to be able to open up, develop the resilience to handle all of it because I know it's possible. It's the only reason it's ever impossible when we're talking about something like this is because of the thoughts that I'm believing. And the same for you when it comes to what you can handle as far as rejection or disrespect or whatever it is that's going on for you, or another email coming in from the alienating parent. You can handle whatever it is that you want to handle. And maybe the most freeing, expansive way is to go into it like, let's see how much I can handle, because I make the decision. I get to decide what my capacity is. That's all it is with capacity, is you making a decision that you want to handle this or you don't want to handle this. Now, I do want to say, and I wrote this in my notes earlier, and I don't think I said it. Before I came to this work, the work that I teach you guys, and of course after alienation already took hold, right, had been going on for years, right? I didn't know that it was a capacity thing I was up against. It was because I was living unconsciously. I just thought that nobody could or should have to handle the pressure that I felt that I was under. And I'm sure maybe you guys can identify with that. Now I know that it's only pressure when I label it as such. It's only pressure because I'm seeing it that way. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. Like, let's say for you that you decide that for you right now that it does feel like pressure. I don't want you to deny that for yourself because you'll lose trust with yourself. And again, we just came off of that from a couple episodes ago too. You can decide, because first off, you're human, right? You are human. We're all human. And so we're fallible. And so and also not even just fallible, we have the gamut of emotions. It's not a problem, but we do have control over our thoughts. And if you do decide that pressure is how you want to view the situation, it's completely fine. But it is good to know, to make yourself aware that this is what you're deciding, what you're labeling it as, okay? And why. Like, ask yourself why you're deciding to lean into that belief that it's pressure or that it's too much to handle. Like, of course, whatever it is, you want to honor that, but is that also how I want to see it? Because even this tiny little shift of noticing what it is that you're labeling something as, a predicament, situation, experience, whatever, just knowing that that's what you're labeling it as and that it's a choice for you, especially after alienation, right? And not having the choice of, having somebody step in between you and your child. Here it is a choice. How you believe, how you see things, what you do with it is all a choice. Even that small shift in ownership, right? Taking responsibility for your thoughts about the situation of alienation will afford you infinite possibility moving forward in that area. Just knowing that there are many more choices than you're probably acknowledging. Because many people, many parents that I speak with will say, I didn't have a choice. This is what I had to do. And it's not true. You always have a choice, and it's really good. Even if you don't like all your choices, you don't have to like all your choices, but just know that there is always a choice. And that you take your power back by saying, I'm not choosing this, or I am choosing this because I don't like the effects that would happen if I don't. You know what I'm saying? So just noticing where you have agency. And then also asking yourself why you're making the choices that you're making. This will help you to increase your capacity because now you know where it's coming from. It's not a fixed statement or a blanket statement that everybody would feel the same way that you do. Many people probably would, but it doesn't have to be the only takeaway, the only way that you can experience it. I hope I'm making sense. So one of the things I didn't mention also is that when we're talking about capacity and capability, I started to talk about it, but I didn't. Capability without capacity will lead to burnout, right? As you have the skill to do something, but not the energy or space to handle it sustainably. Okay. So lots and lots of skill. And then without the capacity, as I talked about with those two examples earlier, Happy Gilmore and the Boy Genius, right? You're not going to be able to sustain it without the capacity. The same thing like when I was talking about my inability to hang on to money, right? Because I didn't have the capacity to hold it, to keep it there without having the nervous energy of wanting to go spend it until I built up the capacity. And really what that was me making the decision that I wanted to hold more, right? To actually hold on to my money and not just go spend it, instant gratification. I was going to change the patterning. And that pattern came from my own parents, from my mom. And then with capacity, having capacity without capability, it leaves a lot of potential unused. So you can have tons of capacity, have the space to hold it, like the mental, emotional space to hold whatever it is that your tolerance, even if you will, resilience, but without the capability, the skill set, then you're going to have a hard time because you lack the skills to actually execute effectively what it is that you need. It's unused potential. So basically, with the growth dynamic, what I'm offering to you guys here is as you increase your desire for more, right, your capacity, you must actually increase your skill set as well, your capability, in order to handle it both, to balance it out. Okay, so it's almost like you're doing one, you're growing your capacity, making a decision to handle more, leaning into expanding, open, blooming, and then you have to increase your capability, get more skills, master techniques and what have you. It just depends on, it's vague right now because it really just depends on what we're talking about. So the two questions you want to ask yourself regarding capacity is, how much can I handle, right? How much can I handle right now? How much do I believe that I can handle? And then the next question is, how much do I want to handle? How much do I want to handle? And make that a very deliberate choice, and one that you're consistently asking yourself throughout all of your experiences in your life. Do I want to handle this? Why or why not? Do I not want to handle this? Why or why not? Knowing your reasons why you don't want to open up to something, which is, like I said a minute ago, is fine if that's something that you're not prioritizing, right? But when you are not choosing something for yourself, and when you're saying, like, no, I'm not doing that, make sure that when you're doing it, that you feel expansive because of the yeses you're saying to other areas of your life. Do you know what I'm saying? So that it's not just a no, I'm not going to choose this because I believe I can't handle it. Or I'm not going to put myself in that situation because I don't think that that's healthy for me. And I'm not, there's no judgment here, but I think too, sometimes that's the tone that we take about it because there's resentment or fear backing it. So instead, is there a reason for me to be fearful? Why? Because all of that you're really ever going to experience, well, if we're talking about just regular relational, not abusive situations, whatever, like somebody coming to hurt you or something, all we're ever really fearing is the physical sensation we feel in our body because of the thought, the assessment we're making of a situation. So how much can I handle? How much do I want to handle, and why? And how is it that I can open up to more instead of stepping back in fear and protection of ourselves? Because we are seeking to protect ourselves. And is that needed? Because I would offer that in most cases, in a non-violent situation, we don't necessarily need to protect ourselves in the way that you might believe that you do, especially coming from a history of trauma. And I know that this is maybe a different viewpoint than others have offered you in the past, but I tell you, the best way to gauge it for yourself is, in each situation I'm saying yes or no to, how am I feeling inside, and why am I saying yes or no to those things? How am I feeling? Does this feel like I'm closed off, or does this feel like I'm opening up? For me, not for them, but for me, or for you. You say that to yourself. Just know that you are not stuck with the capacity that you had at one point, like something static. Your capability can grow, your capacity can grow, always. And I hope that they are like that you're seeking to always grow the both of them. Okay? Every time that you choose to feel one hard feeling on purpose, stay in one hard conversation, tolerate one moment of boredom or peace without blowing it up, you're expanding the amount of life that you can hold and experience. Okay? So this week, instead of saying, I don't have the capacity for that, try asking yourself, how much do I want to hold? How much do I want to be able to hold? And why? What tiny little rep can I do today that grows me in that direction, expands me, blooms me, that's verb, outward, so that you can handle a much bigger, like the umbrella beneath you is much wider, more vast, because it is possible. It is possible. And this is, my friends, I tell you, mastering the difficult emotions is what will set you free. So that's how you go from living a life designed around your believed limits to living a life designed around your true potential. So that is all I have for you guys. I've got to go edit this and figure out what that lady wanted. And I'll talk with you guys later. Okay, take care. Bye.